to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane. Starring Ryan Rash.
No one ever made a difference by being like everyone else.
And Dale Hummel.
Contrast is always a must.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel alongside co-star Ryan Rash.
What is up?
Ryan, how was your weekend?
I had a great weekend. It was so nice to be at an actual show with live animals and live people and live weather, in fact. It was great. It was fabulous.
And this was your first show since lockdown.
This was my first show since I judged the OYE Hog Show in 4 hours when they shut it down. Yes, this is my first one. It was in Alt, Colorado, and it was called the Last Minute Jackpot Show. It was under 2 tents in Brad Anderson's backyard, and I judged hogs the first day and lambs and goats the second day. I had a great time. Very, very enthusiastic kids and families to be back in a real live show ring. Sunday, it got a little sketchy there because I think they said 30 miles north of us, it was actually snowing and really high winds with the rain coming in on the tent sideways, and everybody was drenched, and we lost the mic and electricity. But you know what? I made it work, and we all still had a great time. When it started raining, though, I did say, you know, people, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. There's a whole lot of smoke and mirrors that go into this look, and the wet look does not help. So I'm fixing to look like the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. So y'all just bear with me. But it was a great show. I had a blast.
I love it. And I'd had actually some exhibitors that were showing there had been texting me through the weekend. And I think that it was a much larger turnout than what they had expected. And that's wonderful. And I believe everybody, even though the weather was questionable and the wasn't a normal showgrounds, everybody just made do, and the tolerance level of the exhibitors to not worry about what's going on, just the fact they can get to a show is exciting.
I saw very, very few unhappy looking faces, even in the middle of the torrential downpour. So I think everybody had a really good time and very appreciative of the people that put that show on and got that together. It was a much larger turnout than what they were expecting. I think there were 11 states represented when it was all said and done. But man, it was something.
And I would just assume, and I don't know if they've ever had a show there or not before. I think this maybe is the first one, but in that area, in a local jackpot show, those that are from the area would tell me that, I mean, maybe a quarter of the numbers if it wasn't under this situation and this being one of the first shows people can go to. And it's encouraging that we have that many people excited to get out there and excited to show. And I'm very happy you didn't end up on the news, or that show didn't end up on the news. It's shocking to me when I see the Lake of the Ozarks there in Missouri. They're posting pool parties, and I believe there's one in Houston or somewhere else that I noticed on the news that they're really, I mean, they're legitimately upset that these things are taking place. And I guess in my opinion, we're within a week of this all being normal in some states. So I'm a little confused about why people are looking at it the way they are, but I guess it depends what state you're located in.
Well, we had a news organization or news company turn us into the local sheriff's department, I believe, at 4:30 on Saturday. They had told me beforehand that it was all going to be good. And so evidently the sheriff's department was very, very busy that Saturday. They just had a lot going on. So they didn't get to make it out there till like 9:30 that night after it was over for day one. You know, a little finesse here and there, but we did get turned in, but nothing happened. The show went on.
And I think that's going to be very typical on different counties and different states and all of the above, that there are some of these governors that are including the state here that I'm in Illinois and Michigan, and maybe even a little bit into Ohio and California, that they've locked these states down so tight and some of these counties so tight, they're going to have to continue to adjust because the public simply isn't going to tolerate it. And I think because of that, some things may get opened up sooner, and I hope that's the case. It's inconceivable to me that there's some states that are not progressing towards normalization. And what bothers me, it was very clear in the beginning when this all started, the goal was to flatten the curve. And that makes sense in my mind. That's logical. If we're not prepared with PPE, if we don't have enough ventilators, if we don't know what's going on, we don't have very much science, all of the above, we don't have the therapeutics, we just don't understand what's going on. I'm all about flattening the curve. And I believe the first time they came out and talked about it, well, we need to self-quarantine or shelter in place for 2 weeks and let's see where that curve is. And it continued to get extended. Well, there's no question at this point that we flattened that curve and are on the downswing, yet they keep changing the rules. And in my opinion, once we have the hospital space, the equipment, the personnel that can properly care for those in need, that's when we start easing up things. And we're definitely at that point. It's hard for me to understand how they keep changing the rules on us.
It's wild to me because, like I said, we were there and sheriffs and officials worked with us on that deal. When I got done Sunday, I went to the airport in Denver because I was going to fly out Monday mid-morning. Well, there's no sense in staying in downtown Denver or anything because no bars are open or anything like that. So I just stayed there at the Westin at the airport. And I didn't get there till like 9 something, I think. By the time I got stuff put in the room and everything, showered, it was 9. So one place open to get something to eat. Down there's a bunch of people down there. I mean, it wasn't slam packed or anything, but 2 different groups in there got really upset that there were so many people in that restaurant. And I was like, where do you want us to go? And so, like I touched on last week, I think there's going to be 2 drastically different attitudes toward this. And I don't know how those attitudes got separated, but either people are like, we're getting back to normal, we're taking our life back, and we're going to be, who we were before. Or there's a whole nother group I don't think's ever going to feel safe going back to what was considered normal before.
And that normal may change, just like you're talking about there. And when we travel internationally, or I travel internationally, it's common to see face masks being worn in many of the other countries. And again, they look at it as a respectful situation where they don't want to contaminate anybody with any flu bug or cold bug or what they may have, rather than protecting themselves in theory. And when we show up as Americans in some of these countries, they're borderline offended that we don't have that mask on. It's not a part of our culture. But moving forward, that might be something that we see every time we go to the airport.
Well, they may get offended. I'm sure I offended way more people with my face mask at the airport than people that I did not, because I had a cheetah print one that had silver sparkly letters that said Trump 2020 on it. And so, yeah, I know my face mask offended a lot of people. In fact, one of the flight attendants told me on my trip there that there was a passenger that was offended by my face mask. And I said, I'll be more than happy to take it off. And they asked me if I had another one or if I would wear one of theirs. And I said, no. So
you would assume it wasn't the leopard print or cheetah print. It was the Trump.
I'm thinking it's the Trump because it coordinated very well with my outfit. So I don't think it was, the animal print of it all. I think it was the Trump 2020. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have no doubt. And as we're speaking about politics and there's been a lot of things taking place recently. And I'm sure, Ryan, you're going to be happy to tune in and discuss some of those things. But when we have Joe Biden making the statements that he makes and now starting to come out of the basement, is he not going to self-implode? Has he not already?
Okay. So first off, I don't even think he's even got out of the basement yet, to be honest. And he is literally just making a buffoon out of himself. So he was on, I think it was a podcast. Maybe it was a live interview. I don't remember what it was exactly. With this very popular African-American talk show host named Charlemagne the God. And at the end of it, the host said, it's a long time before the election. We'd like for you to come back. We have more questions. Well, Biden gets pissed. And he says, if you have to question whether you're voting for me or Trump, you ain't black. Now, I cannot even begin with that. Everyone says Trump is a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, all this other stuff. But Biden can tell somebody they ain't black, and it's perfectly okay.
It amazes me how that works. And I don't know how he continues to make these statements, there's no question there's somebody behind the scenes saying, Joe, we just need to speak less or think about what you're going to say. Yet he continues. And it's every time he speaks.
Oh, it's every single interview. There's something that goes wrong. And he's got all these people on his team, and he still can't get through one interview without a huge gaffe or a bumble or a fumble or, I mean, I'm not going to get graphic, but anyway, messing something up like really bad. So, and this is with him in a controlled environment. No one, this is like a one-on-one interview with a podcast or a TV reporter, etc. There is no spectators, no crowds, no nothing. So if you can't handle a one-on-one interview with a prep team probably of 100 people, how are you going to handle anything when you actually have to get out of the basement and go see the public? That's what I'm waiting for. Bring it on.
I am looking forward to it. And when I look at the recent polls, I have no idea how it's happening. We know Trump never polls well. I don't answer a call from somebody taking a poll, and assumably a lot of conservatives don't, and that attributes to how far off the polls were last time. But even Fox came out with a poll this week that it did not look good.
I don't know if you can trust the polls. Again, he was down at least, not even in the margin of error, which normally the polls margin of error is 3 to 5 points. In every poll last time, within probably the last 3 months of the election against him and Hillary Clinton, it wasn't just nationally, it was in the swing state. They said he was never going to win Florida, Iowa, all these other places. I mean, he wasn't even in the margin of error, and he still won. And Hillary Clinton was a much better candidate than Joe Biden is.
Now, everybody's saying how they thought she was a boring candidate, that she wasn't this or that, wasn't that great of a candidate. I don't think she was a good candidate, but I'm with you. I think she's not going out there making those statements, those gaffes that Joe makes every single time he speaks. I don't agree with what Hillary's saying, but most of the time she knows what she's saying.
The only reason Hillary wasn't a good candidate is because nobody trusted her. She was intelligent. This was a statement that went around a lot in that campaign and after. The most prepared person to be the president of the United States. I completely agree with that. No one had been more involved in presidential politics, the scene more than her. She was first lady, a senator, secretary of state. They've been political animals their whole life. No one trusted her. And that's why she lost. But she didn't go around saying idiotic things left and right like this man is. And at least, even though she had a couple of health issues, I remember she passed out, I think, at the 9/11 memorial deal that day right before the election, and they had to rush her off there. But she was clearly more competent and together than what Sleepy Creepy JoJo 33000 is. This dude it's bad. And now they're pulling stuff back because this "you ain't black" comment has gotten out there, and it's got a lot more media attention than all of his other stuff. Now they're pulling comments from, I saw one from 1985 where he was at some political fundraiser and he introduced the singer as Michael Jackson. Being funny, like it was a racist joke. And then he said, oh, wait, maybe he's not Michael Jackson. If he's bad, he'll be Stevie Wonder, I think is what it was. So, clearly, and granted, that's 1985, long, long time ago, but there's more to this story than just the latest hiccup.
No, and I think it'll continue. I hope and pray that his handlers do not keep him out of the debate somehow. My biggest fear is somehow they make an excuse that he can't get on stage and debate Trump. And that concerns me. If everything stays as is, I think it's a lot closer. You let him get out there and try to speak, and especially respond directly to President Trump, I think it's a nightmare for him.
Oh, if they have a debate, Trump will push his button so far the old man will have a meltdown right on the screen. But the Biden campaign is going to have to make a tactical decision. Is it better for them to keep him off the debate stage because they know what will happen? Or is that decision worse than just letting him go out there and be made a fool of? Because either way, it's going to be a tactical risk. You keep him off the stage, There's no blow up, no huge on air drama. But if you keep him hidden, of course, everybody's going to know there's a reason behind that. I think it's going to be interesting because the only stuff he's got going for him is I'm here to beat Trump. And now he's so headlong and deep into identity politics. He's already announced months ago that his running mate would be a woman. Well, now, since this "you ain't black" comment has got a lot of, headway and it's making its way through all the media, now it's getting out there that it's going to have to be a black woman. And I'm not saying that there are not plenty of those people out there, but why do you have to choose your running mate based upon the fact that you have groped women, made them uncomfortable, etc.? So to prove that he's not a sexist, it's going to be a woman. Now to prove the fact that he is not racist, it's going to be an African-American woman.
And if the public doesn't see this, I surrender.
That's what I'm saying. Can they not see through that? He's literally now going to pick a black African-American woman because he's hoping that gets him enough votes to be the president. Several Democrats have been stated off the record that they don't think he'll make it through 4 years. I don't think that's how we want our future president, who has already said he will not seek a second term, and many don't think he'll make it through the first term. That's how he's going to pick who would very possibly become the next president. Doesn't work for me.
If he was to be elected president of the United States, think about the China trade deal that we currently have. Think about holding China accountable for everything that's gone on. It's impossible for me to even imagine the direction that we would go. But, okay, enough about politics. We're going to move on to a new topic. And this is the first time we've had an episode on this. We're just going to call it story time. And Ryan, I'm going to leave this wide open. Take it to any story, funny, serious, educational, any direction that you and I want to go with it. And I'm sure you've got some stories that you can share with us. And I would be happy to interject and guide you through some of those, or at least question some of those. And I'm happy to share some information as well. But hopefully this is something that goes well, and we can incorporate this in every few episodes if it's something that our listeners appreciate.
I'm really feeling like the little wind-up monkey that, people have for entertainment here, because story time is supposed to be both of us having stories, Dale.
I have stories.
Not just me. It's like, okay, let me just turn him on and play your cymbals and entertain everybody. Here we go.
That's how it works. Now, I do have some stories, but they're going to be, I'll start it. I'll even go with the first one. And you had mentioned staying at a hotel at Denver, and Ryan and I have briefly talked about this. He was a little depressed for not being in Vegas on his birthday, so I had made a comment that when Vegas opens back up, we'll get several people and head out to Vegas. And we've talked about doing podcasts in different places and going to stock shows. I'm staying in hotels all over the country, and I very much enjoy traveling internationally. But as I mature, not as I'm getting older, Ryan, as I mature, I'm developing a phobia that it is very difficult for me to stay in some of these hotels.
And why is that?
I can say back when I was coaching judging teams, when I was on judging teams, even 5-10 years ago, I could stay not anywhere, but just about anywhere. And we stayed in some pretty low-end hotels when we were traveling and working on a budget with that judging team. And I'm not saying that I enjoyed it, but I could get through it. Now it seems like if I end up at a hotel, even some of the nicer hotels, if they're the more established, older hotels, and I walk into that hotel or walk into the hallway or the room or the lobby, anywhere, if it doesn't hit me fresh, clean, and actually smell good, I have a hard time not turning around and finding something else. Essentially, if you put up a Holiday Inn Express or even some of the chain hotels, as long as they're relatively new, and in my mind, I guess that the key word there is just immaculately clean. And I've never considered myself a germaphobe. I'll go down and work livestock and not wash my hands and eat a cheeseburger or whatever. It doesn't concern me at all. But other people's organic matter, germs, whatever you want to talk about, I have a very difficult time laying down in that bed and thinking, okay, was this bedspread washed, or did they just wash the sheets? What did they do? It's becoming a problem and inhibiting my desire to leave home.
You are never getting off the reservation again after Miss Rona without a hazmat suit. That's all there is to it. But I mean, that was a great story, Dale. We're glad all our listeners know how weird you are now.
Well, I bet there's hundreds of people just like this listening that now that they feel better, they know it's a common problem.
Oh, well, I got a much better hotel story than that. So
let's hear it.
For all these people listening, now some of these stories, you have to remember this was a different time back then. And again, I will state from the start of this lovely little process that we're about to go through here, I do not condone any of these actions that happen. This is not something that I think y'all should go out and do. I am just merely sharing the memories of my past. So, want that out there. I do not want to hear from parents saying, I told children to go do X, Y, and Z after this, because that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying, learn from my experiences and be better, I guess. But
so this will be a little bit like Jumpin' Jack Hoyle, and we don't jump off the roof. We don't brand ourselves.
Right, yeah, exactly.
All of those things.
Right. So many years ago, when I was in high school, I showed at the Sioux Falls Farm Empire show one time in my life, because it's always used to be right during Fort Worth, and we always had as a junior, had steers and heifers there. Lots of time had other species, but we had one weekend. I flew from Fort Worth to Sioux Falls, showed prospect steers there, and flew back to Fort Worth. Well, did very well. Had Grand Reserve prospect steer at the feeder show, so we're going to fly out the next day. And so we were at the hotel, and my mother had sent my brother with me, which was never a good idea. Randy was a real party animal when he got into college, and this would probably have been his first year into college. And so we were at the hotel, and I'm downstairs eating, and Randy had hung at the barn with a whole bunch of people. Well, after we've gone and eat, get back to my hotel room, and there's Randy and about 20 college-age people, and they have appeared to buy out a small liquor store, and they are celebrating the most for my win. Well, this continues to go on, and of course, cops, the little hotel police come, ask them to keep it down several times. Anyway, long story short, at some point in this party, I decide to go stay with a friend of mine who doesn't have 45 people in the room, because my flight leaves at like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm hopefully going to make it in time to show in the open show at Fort Worth the next day. I come back to my room the next morning to collect my things and get ready to go and see if Randy's going to make it on the flight. They had thrown the TV out of the window into the parking lot of the hotel.
And was your mother at this hotel?
Oh, no. She sent me and Randy alone. Mm-hmm.
Alone?
Alone, yep.
Well, what else would she expect?
He was the guardian. Y'all all think y'all know my mother. Y'all do not know my mother. The facade that y'all know is not who the woman really is.
Time out. Now, I know your mother well enough. She is the sweetest, kindest, all the above. She's been nothing but nice to me.
As I said, y'all all know the facade that is Jesse, Shree, Moeller, Clooney, Roush, Carrabba, Bray. It is not the real her.
And what is the real her?
The real her is when I was a child, she thought Randy could do absolutely no wrong. Like, for instance, another lovely story. My freshman year in college, I had about 13 head in an open string going to Louisville. It was the first time I had not got to spend every single day with those animals, because we sent them to a professional fitting service because, of course, I was in college. And so I had not been around them every day. So I was going to go to Louisville for the entire time, from the time they got there till it was over. Well, again, she decided to send Randy with me because, he's so responsible and such a great guardian and all this other stuff and whatever. Well, she gives him just entirely too much cash. I mean, she pays for the hotel up front, puts her credit card down at the hotel. I had a minor hiccup at the beginning of college and kind of went on a shopping spree that was unsanctioned.
Time out. Tell me about this. I know we're sidetracking here. When you say minor hiccup, like you bought a shirt and a jacket
No, it was a lot. Maybe a fall wardrobe, but anyhow, so they had got the credit card bill right before Louisville. Well, they did not take my credit card away, but they gave me a different one that had a much lower limit on it than the one that I had when I went to Louisville. But she gave Randy an obscene amount of cash. And they were coming to the show, but they weren't going to be there for 3 days. So the first night we get there, and one of the guys on the crew, it's his birthday. Another friend of mine went with us by the name of Tony Collins. Well, they were all going to go to a strip club for this other guy's birthday. Okay, great. We go to the hotel. Next morning, it's time to get up, go to the show. Randy and Scooter, who was my college roommate, are, of course, not in any state to be getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't know what time they came in. So
did you partake in going to the strip club with them?
No, I did not. I did not go to the
You're
strip.
sure of this?
No, I'm positive. There's many people that can verify the story. We did not. So I shake Randy and ask him for some cash because, the responsible one, Shree gave all the cash to. He had 92 cents left. He must have bought drinks and lap dances for half of Louisville. I do not know what all he did. He had 92 cents left. So, of course, I was hostile, called Shree, and she got me some money really quick. But yeah, again, that was another one of Randy's finer guardian moments. One time I was judging, actually the only time I've judged in Mexico. She sent him with me. We went down there, and it was a weird trip from the very beginning. Got picked up at the airport there, and from the time we got there to all the way through the show, there was a U.S. diplomat guy that they had put on me to be my handler or whatever and make sure I had transport to the hotel and back, and who I ate all the meals with and all this other stuff. And he kept trying to exert his influence on who needed to win the show, etc. Well, that wasn't working out. But during the show, Randy, of course, was never real into livestock shows, so he goes out and is viewing everything else that goes on in this deal. And Randy, for all of his faults, he had a huge heart, and he was a huge animal lover. Well, at this show, they had this display of all these different breeds of dogs, and they were in these little cages, etc. Not probably the best circumstances, but the show was at night, and of course that part of the fair had shut down or whatever. So he just decides to turn them all loose.
He turned the dogs loose.
All of them. Mm-hmm.
Just as if a PETA animal activist came in to set them free.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Just turned every single one of them things, let them go wild. Well, of course, we didn't know any of it or anything until we get back to the hotel, and he tells...
Time out. He wasn't doing this like as a practical joke or anything. He did it out of the kindness of his heart.
Oh, yeah. Randy had this... I can't tell you how many rescue dogs this boy took in throughout his life. And so we get back to the hotel, and I thought he had been acting weird, but he was weird anyway. I was like, what did you do? And finally he came out with the story. I was like, we are going to go to jail in Mexico because of you. And I'm not going with you. I have an alibi. I was in the middle of the show ring. Everybody said, you are going all by yourself. This is all you. But luckily we got out of the country. But that also might be part of the reason I've never got to judge in Mexico again.
Can you imagine? That I don't know how that's looked at in Mexico, but I've not heard good things about the Mexican jail. That would be a frightening concept.
If I would have known, I would have probably killed him right there, but I didn't until we got back to the hotel. And so I just started trying to get the quickest flight out that we possibly could before they figured it out.
And in his defense, I'm sure they probably were not in the best conditions, is my assumption.
I completely agree. They probably weren't, but it still was not a wise decision.
You don't think that was his place to go and make that decision?
I don't think it was his shining moment. No. Mm-mm.
And what were you judging in Mexico?
Brangus cattle.
And I'm assuming similar to our shows. I've not been to a cattle show in Mexico.
The one idea that they have in Mexico that they got going right is all around the show ring, it is a full service bar.
Seriously.
No, I'm not talking like I'm talking like bar tables and bar stools all around, and they have people in tuxes, and you order and they bring the crowd drinks.
Wow.
But I also think that in Mexico, only the super, super, super wealthy actually exhibit livestock. And so maybe that's why. But like, I was impressed with that. Like, that's the only place I've ever judged where they wanted you to get drunk before the show. I mean,
Before you judge the show.
yeah, they were promoting it, like shots of tequila and the whole 9 yards. I don't like tequila. Callie Ellis is the only person that I will do shots with because I really don't like them. But they were trying to get you full of booze before you judge the show.
You know, when I think about that, and I think about back to the Royal Highland show in Scotland, and it wasn't to that extreme, but close. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have alcohol at our shows or anything, but this is right there ringside available, just part of it. And I can even think back to a little bit in Argentina. It seems like a lot of these other countries, it is a little bit maybe more of a social event, even more so than what we have here. And I consider our shows very much a social event.
We all know that people have a good time and drink at all levels of shows here in our country, but like most of the time it's either in a koozie or in a Yeti or something. It's not like a guy in white gloves on a tray coming up to you serving you drinks right there at the show ring. And I'm telling you, this is what we were talking about here. I was like, this is impressive. I mean,
that is interesting, but the rest of the show ran mechanically, classes in, classes out, similar to what you're used to.
Oh yeah, the classes were by age and had to have a translator, and so I would give a little short snippet of my reasons, and he would translate and go on. So that took a little more time, and I didn't take Spanish in high school. I took French because clearly that was the smart thing to do when you grow up in Texas, but that's what it did anyway. So I have no idea what the man said, if it was anywhere close to what I was saying, but it kept getting applause, so I just rolled with it.
So it seemed to work. I had the opportunity to judge an Angus show in Argentina last summer, and under similar circumstances. What was interesting to me on the show dynamic, it was a 2-day show, and the first day was more like the pin show in Denver. They're just bringing the cattle to us loose, not haltered, nothing, and even singles that way. And then you'd go into the second day and have a more of a normal type show setting that we're used to. But then at the end of that day, we bring that champion female and champion bull out of the pins into the show ring where they've got a normal show and a halter. So they walk them out here. They're semi-broke, semi-not. And as we go to select the champion, all of a sudden they cut this bull and this female loose just in the show ring. And you're trying to compare those to ones that are actually on a halter and in fit, and they're actually sticking them.
How the hell does that work?
I mean, they're used to it, just normal to them. And I believe that day that the female that came from one of the pin shows actually won the show. To me, it's mind-boggling, and I'm not sure what their culture is in terms of, is this more of a commercial show and this is more of a show like we have here? It doesn't appear that way. It appears to be all the same, but I don't know the direct origin or why they have it separated like that. Like when we go to Denver and there's a pin show, we know that's geared a little more practical, a little more everything going that direction. Where we go up on the hill and in the main show ring there, it's all about our hair and fluff and fitting and all the above.
If there was a choice between one running around out on a halter that had not been fit or clipped and one standing on a halter that was fit and clipped and fluffed and puffed and all this other stuff, and they used the one running around, I'm going to be like Trump. Rigged.
I get it. I understand. I completely get it.
Rigged.
No, and maybe there was something to that. And I was one of the associate judges there, and every time you'd say something that translation, you really don't know.
I would have demanded a recount.
The gentleman I was judging with spoke a little bit of English, and he kept telling me about his forehand or forearm. He basically was talking about his pasterns, but it took me until the end of the second day to ever figure out he wasn't happy with these pasterns. And once we get the translation right, but yeah, it's a great event and incredible to learn those kind of things. I actually had an opportunity to spend a summer in Australia when I was in college, and I don't need to remind people, as Ryan did, this was a very, very long time ago. Probably didn't put a lot of thought into what I was going to do when I got there. I probably wasn't as organized about everything, but my parents were happy to buy me a ticket, and away I went to Australia. I did have a friend that came over from Australia to the University of Illinois. They have a national judging contest in Australia. And if you win that national contest, and I think there's apparently no age limit. At least most of them that would win would be in their lower 20s, maybe as old as 25 or 26. And if they'd win that competition as an individual, they would get a 1-semester scholarship to the University of Illinois and travel with the livestock judging team. And I think even a couple of them actually competed at some of the non-sanctioned contests. So I got to know the young man that was there, and he invited me to come over and work on his operation. And I guess I'm telling this story not because there's any humor in it whatsoever, but for a lot of those kids that are in high school right now or even in college, a lot of my experiences go back to trips like I made to Australia or a couple trips that I made to Europe. And when I can go to Australia as a junior in college, the first operation I show up at is a cattle and sheep operation. I remember the very first day. I wake up and they say, let's go check the lambs, or we're lambing right now. Let's go check on some Dorset stud sheep they talked about and a bunch of merinos. And we get out into the Dorset pasture where all these pregnant ewes are, and we're in 2 to 4 inches of water, perfectly flat ground. The water's not going anywhere, and there is nowhere dry for these sheep to lamb out. And I'm thinking this is physically impossible. There is no way these lambs are going to live. And they're out there lambing in this water. Lambs pop up, start nursing, and as far as I can tell, we're perfectly fine. Some of those things boggle my mind how we want to pamper things here. And again, tying it more to the show world maybe than the commercial industry, but so many things that you can obtain and learn. And maybe the best example is when I traveled around and went from one cattle operation to another, I'd spend a week at one and go to another one to try to gain as much knowledge as I could. And I show up at one of the Angus ranches, and they knew I was from the United States, and they just assumed that, well, he must know how to fit cattle and he must be capable of picturing and all these things. They were very much in their infancy in showing cattle there and preparing them. And some of the American fitters would come over once in a while and help. So they give me this thing that is the blower. And it's literally like an overgrown hairdryer where the motor and everything you have to lift up to blow the cattle out. And a set of old flathead clippers with cattle that have 1.5 to 2 inches of hair. And they wanted me to try to get those clipped and pictured while I was there. And just amazing how things have evolved and the different things you learn. And that very same farm, even though they were that far behind on clipping and fitting, I probably gathered some of the most important genetic and breeding information and why they did things and why they made certain matings than I ever have in my life. It's things that I can reflect back on and even tell today. It's perfect. My last 2 weeks there, I bought something called a koala pass. And that was a pass to ride any of the public transit type buses that travel around Australia. So I thought I'd start in Melbourne and go up through Sydney and the Gold Coast over to Ayers Rock and back down. Sounded simple, but way further than I realized to get done in 2 weeks. And I also, before I went, knowing that I want to travel a little, have you ever heard of a youth hostel?
Yes, I have heard of those things before.
And have you ever stayed in one?
Oh, no.
Why?
No. I am not a glamping, backpacking, camping type of gal. No YMCAs or youth hostels for this girl. No.
I didn't even know what they were, but I bought this pass because they said you can stay in a youth hostel for $3 or $4 a night. And I thought, well, that sounds great. You show up at a youth hostel and there's bunk beds. There's maybe 9 beds in this relatively small room, and they give you a bed and you're expected to do a chore. And the people you meet, crazy, interesting, mostly backpackers from Europe. One of them talked me into going to an island just off of the Gold Coast. And I said, well, that's fine. It's called Magnetic Island, I believe. And there were several from the hostel going out there. So we all get on the ferry and go out there. And we get on the beach, and I don't see anybody else around at that moment. It was still fairly early in the morning. And they just stripped down buck naked. The entire island was kind of like a naked community. Nobody bothered to mention this on the way there. And I obligation or felt obligated, went ahead and joined the crew, but probably one of the most uncomfortable moments in my entire life.
And this is the same man that 10 minutes ago said that he can't stay in a hotel any longer.
Now, remember, this was a long time ago.
He can't stay in a hotel any longer, but he can strip butt naked after staying with 9 people that he never met before on the floor on a mattress and get naked
Yep.
in a sea with some people. Yeah, okay, I'm not buying it. But
And until you stay in a youth hostel like that, or there were some backpackers in, it is a very interesting thing. And it appears to be the culture even till today. A lot of people from the European countries, even South American countries, if their families are wealthy enough and they can afford to do so, after high school, it's very common. They'll just travel the world for a year and then come back and go into a job or go into college. And that's what most of the people were doing when I would meet them. And it's very, very different lifestyle than maybe what we're accustomed to here.
well, I would just love to see you doing this blow dryer fitting expedition, but I got lots of stories about fitters and things like that. But back when I was in college and right after college and I moved home, I used to basically run a halfway house for fitters. That's what people called it here. There would be multiple fitters that were like, didn't have jobs at the time and they'd like just come lay over here and whatever. Well, I had.
And this is at Gay Hill.
Yeah, at Gay Hill. Yeah. For like 2 years, I had a fitting, grooming, and showmanship camp, several sessions during the summer. Well, I mean, I already had these guys here, so might as well do it. So we were just going to start out. The kids come, they bring their animals, bring their equipment. First morning, teach them about washing and blowing and all this other stuff. So we get one on the wash rack. We show them the proper way to wash one. We'll show them the proper way to blow one. And so then we're going to turn kids loose, let them do it. Their own animals. Washing goes pretty good. I mean, most of us were soaked. It was fine. Well, we'll get them all off the wash rack and get ready to start blowing them. So we tell the kids to go get their stuff to blow their calves. And I'd stepped outside. I don't remember if I had a phone call or what. And I hear this racket from inside the barn. I'm like, I'm going to have to call you back. And about time I'm about to hit the barn door, here comes out this posse of fitters of mine, and they are like about to die. This one kid brought a leaf blower, and that's what he thought he was going to use to blow dry his calf with. Oh, my heart just broke for this kid.
Oh,
It was awful. Like he had no clue, etc. So long story short, it was funny. He even laughed about it. And I gave him a Sullivan's blow dryer for him to go home with. But that was like, I thought to myself, I said, and this is day one. What is going to happen at the rest of this? But it all worked out. But it was one of those moments that we still talk about today. But
and sometimes we just take it for granted, and a lot of us in the stock show industry just assume that everybody is on the same page. But we all started somewhere, and it's interesting that sometimes we don't know, and let's hope we can push some education out there to help some of those.
oh yeah, I mean, and like the kid, he handled it great. He's like, this is all I got, so that's what I was gonna bring. And like, it was fine, and he even laughed about it. But when I was a kid showing, we went every single weekend. And normally, even when it was just me, I'd probably have 10 head at every show. That required a lot of help. And so we always had a bunch of fitters here with us and at shows and stuff like that. And I am in no way a calm, reserved, laid back person ever. But for those that knew me back when I was showed compared to now, they will tell you I'm much more mellow. I was not anywhere close to mellow back then. And so we would go to these shows, and a lot of times my parents, I mean, John Ben was very, very busy with business a lot of the time. And sometimes John Ben and Sheree just didn't want to go to the jackpot show 6 hours away when they had already been to 500 already. So a lot of times I just went with the crew. And the older I got, that happened a lot more. Well, of course, the older I got, the more opinionated I got about things. So we would have to hold these weekly team meetings on Monday after we got back from the show because I had obliterated some person that was on the crew or done something they didn't like. So we have to have these group meetings in the trophy room of our house every Monday night so we could all they could all say what I had done to hurt their feelings and all this other stuff, and we could come back together and be a team. And so, but one of these meetings was because of a show that we had gone to the weekend before. And in the TJLA, they have a showmanship buckle. Well, there's only 8 showmanship shows a year. And over the years, all 8 of them counted, or, 6, etc. But since there's only 8, they're really important if you want to win the buckle. Of course, me being competitive, I never wanted to lose the buckle. So we're at this show, and there's a new guy on the crew, and I go to put my show halter on showmanship stair, and he looks at me and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting my halter on my showmanship stairs. They're calling for us. We got to get up there." He's like, "Well, you can't show that one." I said, "Well, why the hell can't I?" He said, "That's the stair that's going to win the show." I said, "Well, it's also the stair that acts the best and the only one that's ever been to a show before. So, yeah, this is the one I'm going to show." He's like, "No, he has to rest." And so this guy takes the halter off the stair, ties him back down, goes and grabs this other calf that's never been to a show before, puts the halter on him, drags him out in the middle aisle, says, "Here, go show this one." Me being me, I said, "You want me to show that steer in showmanship?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." Grabbed the halter, dropped it, slapped the steer on the ass. He went crazy out the barn door into the parking lot, while him and everybody else on the crew was catching said cow. I went and got another halter, put it on the steer that I had originally planned to show, drug that calf to the ring, and won the showmanship, all before they ever got back from catching said psycho cow in the parking lot of the Jackpot show.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for those listeners out there, I'm assuming showmanship was as big a deal to you as winning the show.
More.
Personally.
More.
I see that. I would say that is in the minority at this point with most showmen.
And I'd say this when I judged. Like, I was very fortunate to win more shows than I lost, but not everybody is going to get to have the grand champion pig, goat, lamb, steer, heifer. But everybody can win showmanship depending on how hard you want to work and your dedication to it. And when you win showmanship, you're actually the grand champion kid. And since I had a lot of help, we spent a lot of money to be successful at this, I got a lot of flack that I didn't do anything. I didn't work with my animals, all this other stuff. So my way to prove all of those people wrong that used to talk trash about me was to beat them in showmanship every single weekend. So yeah, it was real important to me.
That makes perfect sense. I can relate to that. That's good. And I think there's kids out there today that are still putting that showmanship as a priority, and it's good. And in some of these, I know that we're into the virtual shows and things like that, but I've had some of my families that I work with call, and that's one of the families, their biggest thing is they want to get into this virtual showmanship contest. Far more important to them than going to try to win a regular virtual show or anything else. And it's great.
I think showmanship is probably, it is equally or more important than the actual stock show part of it. I don't think that it is pushed as much as it should be. And, for those people out there in the virtual show world and all that other stuff, I'm going to be honest with you. I judged one virtual showmanship contest. And now when they call and ask me to judge virtual shows, if showmanship is a part of it, I politely and respectively declined, because I really wrestled with judging that first one. It was incredibly difficult to me to judge showmanship on a video. But I do think those contests are good, and I'm sure there's lots of people that feel comfortable judging them. I'm just not one of those people. You line showmanship up at any show in the world, and I'll get out there and I'll get down and dirty with you.
But not in the virtual show.
Not in the virtual show, no.
And I had a text actually come in here while we're recording. They're wanting to know how you handled that Sunday show out of Colorado, and I think you already kind of covered it. But they're sharing some of this information, and it truly was a storm. That your sideways rain, wind, sandblasted, all the above, and your makeup held up through that.
It was towards the end of the lamb show. We were on crossbreds, and then we still had goat showmanship and goats to do. I was standing in the middle of the tent watching them go around the ring, and I promise you, water was hitting me in the middle of the tent. That's how sideways it was blowing through. I love shows so much, and that was the first one I got to do. I was going to make the best of it. Even when the mic went out, I went over there and told him, "I'm loud enough. We'll just come over here and talk to y'all. And it was not pretty. You didn't believe me when I told you Sunday Night Golf. It was not a good situation at all.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Ryan calls me shortly after the show when he gets in the car and tries to explain that they're in the middle of a tornado or a thunderstorm or something. And yeah, it happens. We're at shows and no big deal. But when I stop and think about it, I've seen some pictures. We're literally talking just some temporary tents put up and everybody's showing off their trailers. How are they even getting the stock from the trailers to the ring and all the above?
Most of the goats were carried.
Huh.
Because it was so muddy with that rain. Even when it kind of quit raining, there was no grass or anything. It was just dirt. And so it was so muddy. I'd say 75% of the goats were carried.
And yet we're showing it's going on because that's the first one since lockdown, and we have to appreciate that spirit. And you can imagine if this would have happened a year ago, the people would be complaining about we had to walk through mud, we had to do this or that, and they just rolled with it, I assume.
Oh yeah, I didn't see anybody getting upset or angry or anything like that, and so we just rolled on with it. And I still had a great time. I tried to make everybody laugh about the situation and go on. But yeah, I mean it was less than ideal, and probably if this had happened a year ago, it would have been real bad. But last weekend, I don't think it bothered that many people. We just rolled with it and had a good time anyway.
And it's great that they said somebody had reported it, but obviously that county and those law enforcement officers are pretty good about it.
Dale, since we're on the story time subject.
No. Remember, there are rules.
Oh, well, no, but I've got a great story about it. But I want to know, since I'm the only one, offering up truth in this episode. Do you have any stories?
I talked about a naked beach and an island with 9 strangers.
Oh, okay, whatever. Anyway, do you have any stories about like insane animals?
Insane animals. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. I do. Some of you, and I don't know if we've mentioned this or not, we have a pet kangaroo that roams the property. Call him Roo, very original name. My youngest son was visiting with a gentleman that does educational wildlife programs. And his questions to this guy are, can I get a kudu? Can I get an antelope? Can I get all these different? He's always wanting to get these animals that he knows this guy has. And he kept saying, no, it just won't work. And he finally gets to a kangaroo. And he says, well, it might work. And I thought I'll at least consider it. And I told this gentleman, our friend that puts on this educational program, just see if there's any baby kangaroos available, how much they are, and just let me know what it looks like. He shows up about a week later with a kangaroo, with his hand out for a check for what the kangaroo cost, and all of a sudden we have one, and it's in the house for several months, and now he's actually kind of a free roam kangaroo. He comes up to the door and begs for cookies. He hangs out in the barn. Anybody comes over to visit, he's pretty social with them. We had our gentleman that helps us with our podcast that does any of the editing or submits it to the other platforms. Ryan and I maybe aren't that technical, so we have a person that does that for us. He and his family were coming over, and I'm thinking, well, these kids want to see the kangaroo and some other things, some exotic cats and a goat and a pig and many other things. Well, I go looking for the kangaroo since he's kind of free roaming the property. I hadn't seen him for a few hours. Well, he was out laying on the front porch. I go up to him and he's a little nervous. There'd been a little bit of storm come through, and I'm not sure what set him off, but he was definitely not as social and would prefer to kind of hang out by himself. And I thought, well, I better put him back down in the horse stall in the barn so these kids can see him. And the only way, and this is a half-grown red kangaroo, they get 6 foot tall at maturity, and he's not there yet, but he's decent size. And we've had to move him around. You grab him by the tail and kind of bear hug him. So I pick him up and I jump up on the back of the tailgate of a pickup. My wife's going to drive me down to the barn, so I don't have to carry him all the way down there. And I lost my balance. I go on my back of the bed of the pickup, and I have a half-grown kangaroo on top of me. And I'm thinking if I let him go, he's maybe going to hurt himself jumping off. So I keep a hold of his tail as he proceeds to just take those back legs and jump up and down, just pounding me. I came out with a bloody lip. My wife was entertained. I think one of my kids was able to witness it. They loved it. And the end of the story is that he behaved very well once we got him down to the barn, and our gentleman helps with the podcast. All of his kids got to interact with him. So not a crazy story, but it was painful.
God bless Rue and all that. I was talking about like insane livestock animals, like show animals. But
insane, yeah, not terrible.
Okay, well,
I mean, every one of the goats is insane, but they can't do that much damage.
Knock on wood, I'll have to knock on my head, but I have never been hospitalized in my life. I've never broke a bone. I am just been blessed to be extremely healthy. Now, I have had some incidents, and summer before I was a senior in high school, we went to this show in Brenham, and it was always the first big show of the summer. It was held in early June, and I had probably 12 head there. Well, we get there Friday, make beds, all this stuff, and we're going to go take our cattle to trailer to tie out at night. Well, I had this one steer that was a lunatic. We called him Twister. He was really not very right in the head. Well, I was the only one that could lead him. Like, none of the other guys could lead him, anything like that. So I'm leading him to tie outs. Well, there's these two little big kids playing over here, and they're screaming. Well, he rears up, he comes down on top of me, runs over my back. So I am flattened. Well, my parents are up at a different place at the stock show, having a cookout with some friends, eating a hamburger, whatever. Well, this one lady calls 911. So here comes the ambulance. Here comes Cherie. She's now frantic and screaming and crying and whatever. Go to the hospital. I've got like 6 bruised ribs. Fine, whatever. Go back to the hotel, and they're like, well, Ryan, you can't show. I was like, oh yeah, this is the first show here, I'm showing. So next morning we go out there. They had given me Tylenol 3. Now, my mother pops more pills than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And so I have done the opposite in my life. Like, I got to be on death's door to take medication. I don't even take Tylenol for headaches. So especially then, I didn't even know what Tylenol 3 with codeine was, but they made me take this pill. So I didn't know what planet I was on the entire day that we were showing there that Saturday. Well, we had got through the majority of it, but I also had a heifer at that show named Lone Star. This heifer wanted to hurt you and anybody else. Well, we had already decided that we weren't going to show Twister in the steer show. We had other steers we thought could pull it off, but Lone Star was the lead heifer, and by God, I was not giving up my best heifer and my best steer. So I go out there, and Dr. Skaggs is judging the show, and we get halfway around the ring, and she can tell that I'm not quite on my A game, because I couldn't have told you where we were at probably.
So she may have sensed a little bit of weakness, didn't you?
Yeah, she does this kind of spin, turn deal. I go flying head first across the show ring, and my head ends up slamming into a iron leg of the table that the announcer standing all this is on. So again, this is less than 24 hours. I am now face first in the dirt again. They roll me over. I can't feel anything. So I think I'm perfectly fine.
Oh, no.
They've got one of the ring stewards ripped his shirt off, and they've got it on holding this gash in my eyebrow. I can't feel anything. I'm telling everybody I'm fine, whatever. And they've already called the ambulance. My mom's out there. They've stopped the show. And I was like, Cherie, I'm fine. Just let me up, whatever. Well, I'm a very persuasive person, and when I get mad, I get more persuasive, because Cherie does not like confrontation. And so I had just about won her over that I was going to stick it out and show this effort. And the guy pulled his shirt up, and they could see my skull.
Oh, my.
So we get back in the ambulance. We go back to the same hospital. I get like 42 stitches in my forehead. John Ben was very upset because we had got there before these other people that came in, and they had been in a car wreck and somebody's foot had got pulverized, whatever. It was a mess. We go back, get my head. I look like a World War II veteran because got all these stitches, and they wrapped my head in an ace bandage, and I pull down the mirror in the truck, and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm fixing my hair. They're like, why? I said, Grand Drive hasn't happened yet. I go back in, and I show this crazy, insane thing again, because she went on to win the Simmentals with somebody else on the lead of her. Go back into Grand Drive with this crazy Lone Star cow, and Dr. Skaggs like, you are insane, but you're going to win the cow show. I was like, you damn right I am. And I showed all 12 head the next day on Sunday, wrapped up like a World War II veteran.
You have not returned to the hospital since?
Not for anything, no. I'm telling you, Dale, if you go to the hospital and are in bad shape, I am not the person to call. Because anybody that I have ever gone to visit in a hospital never made it out. So I am not the person you want visiting you in the hospital.
Absolutely not. Now, that's inspiring that you held in there, and I'm going to credit the Tylenol. That would have been the only saving grace on that one.
My mother she was screaming and like, I cannot believe you're acting like this. And she was so mad. She's like, you are just being irrational and unreasonable. Do you know who you're acting like? I said, absolutely. You, Mom, get out of my way. I helped all these kids with these animals for years and years and years. Well, anyway, Callie, she's been on the podcast. She'll know she's more my sister than anything else. Well, her first year that she ever had steers from me, we went to Austin, to Rodeo Austin. Well, her mom had been in a terrible accident with the cow and been in and out of the hospital. I mean, she was in the hospital for like 3 months. Well, the day that we were going to show in Austin, they had a hospital checkup visit that they couldn't miss. Her ag teacher was having a baby. Her county agent was at somewhere. It was me, Callie, and the guy helping me at the top. And so that was it. I mean, that was all there was. Well, she wins champion American breed steer. So we go to the drug test booth and we're making our way down there. And because there's like, where are your parents? She said, don't have any. They're not here. Well, where's your county agent? They're not here. Like, well, we have to have somebody, sign off on your drug test form here. And she's like, look, I'm telling you, nobody's here. It's me, the gay, and the fitter. So you can pick. Which one do you want? And I was standing there, I was going, she really just said you can pick the gay or the fitter. Oh, great. We are going to get disqualified right here, right now in front of everybody. But I did sign the drug test form and we made it out through. But that was one of the funnier stories. That steer actually went on to be the reserve grant of the whole show in Austin that year. First one she ever had for me. She didn't know it was going to happen. I had a good feeling it was going to happen because I had listened to the guy sorting and I kept telling her, I said, I think you're going to be reserved. She's like, I already won my breed. Went, no, reserve of the show, girl. So I'm like, we're not done yet.
While you're on those stories, I've noticed it as well. Maybe we're just remembering those, but it seems like there's almost a genetic link on some of these traits that we want in the show ring that ties to crazy. Because some of the very best ones that I've seen are just not right in the head.
Oh, I think it is absolutely true. I'm telling you, back in high school, the bull that was cranking out all the show steers that won was Full Throttle. And I'm telling you, they were all crazy. There was not one that had a brain cell in its head. And I mean, I had a barn full of these things.
You knew it going into it, but they're that good. You just did it.
And I mean, some eventually where you weren't like, okay, is this going to be a rodeo every time? But more times than not, you never, I mean, it was always like, are we going to get through here without an incident? I mean, and it was every single one of them I ever had that was a Full Throttle.
And I see it in these goats that we're raising day in and day out. And I don't know that we intentionally did it, but we've bred crazy into them. And some of our very best ones are just, I mean, they're convinced you're a predator and you're going to consume them.
This weekend, there was some downtime. So I always stand there at the side of the ring and people come up and talk. And this one family, we were sitting there talking because girl was showing in the lamb and goat ring and we're waiting for her show pigs. So another family's talking to me and they're like, how many times do you get chewed out at a show? Which, I mean, not an ideal situation, but I've actually been really blessed that I've only had a couple of confrontations in this. But years ago, when I first started judging, I got asked to judge a county fair down in South Texas. Steer and heifer deal. Wasn't a huge show, but nice show. And there's this one guy, and he's been standing there on the rail all day. And y'all know me. I talk to the crowd, etc. And I can tell this guy is just not having it. And
you don't think he was staying there just to listen to you talk?
No. I mean, looks pissed. Body language is confrontational. I don't get it because he's been there from the start of the show till it's over.
And did he look upset at the very beginning?
I didn't really notice him till about 2 classes in. And so, but once I noticed him, like you kept noticing him because he just kept looking more pissed off. Anyway, we get done with the show and I'm going to walk out, and I probably shouldn't have done this, and it's my own fault, but I really didn't understand if I had offended him or something. I wanted to make it right. So I went up to him. I said, "Sir," I said, "you've been standing here all day and you just don't look real happy."
Ryan, why would you approach him?
If I had made
you know what's coming.
If I had made him mad, I wanted to explain myself. I was young and naive, Dale. Whose story is this? Mine or yours? Hush. So walked up to him and said,
Time out. Did you have makeup on? Was this a pre-makeup?
No, it was pre-makeup, but everybody still knew I was gay. But I mean, it was pre-makeup.
But you weren't dressed to offend him or anything like that?
No. I mean, like I had on blue jeans and a polo shirt. I mean, it was this butch.
No eyelashes, no fingernail polish.
Nothing. No, I was
nothing entertaining at all. You're almost boring.
I was like 20 years old. I mean,
okay.
I was still deeply in the closet, but as most people will tell you, from the time I could talk and like actually do things, pretty much everybody knew I was gay. But anyhow, I walk up to this man. He's got to be late 60s, early 70s. And so I said, "Sir, you just look like you didn't have a good time at the show. And if there was something I did, I want to make it right." And again, I was young and stupid, should have never done it. I learned a lesson. And he said, "I'm just not buying your book." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "I don't buy it." I said, "Well, what are you not buying?" He says, "No way you can turn your back to those animals and talk about them. And you may have all these other people fooled, but I'm not buying it." I said, "Well, was there anything that you heard me say that you didn't think was accurate?" He says, "You can't do that. Nobody can do it." I said, "Sir, what animal did you have at the show?" He said, "I didn't have one." Well, then I flipped. I got mad. This was all my own fault for going up to him. I said, "Okay, wait a minute. You're telling me you did not have an animal in the entire show, but you have sat here and given me go to hell looks, and everybody that has come up and talked to you, I have heard you talking trash about me, and you didn't have a horse in the race." He said, "Yep." I said, "Well, that doesn't sit real well with me." He says, "I've been coming to this county fair for 42 years. And I said, "Have you ever gone anywhere but the county fair? That's what I want to know."
And I'm guessing not.
And he's like, "What does that mean?" I said, "Sir, I want to know, have you ever won the county fair?" "Well, that doesn't have anything to do with it." I said, "Have you ever been to a show outside the county fair?" "What does that have to do with it?" I said, "I have been. I have won. I have done." Oh, I mean, literally, I was so mad after he told me that he did not have an animal in the, because like, if you don't have a dog in the fight, I don't see how you get mad and like cause a scene like this man was doing. And so anyway, finally, this guy that was running the show comes up. He's like, "What is the problem?" And I said, "You got to get me out of here. I'm going to go to jail of this." So anyway, he did get me out of that situation. But yeah, so for any of y'all out there listening, do not go up to people and ask them when you know they were not digging what you were doing on the ring. Learn from my mistakes. Do not confront them. Do not try to make it okay with them. It does not work out.
Especially at a county fair. Especially.
Yeah, because I about ripped that cane out of that old man's arms and beat him with it, but I didn't.
And that's where you're going to find that confrontation. Young in judging a county fair, and it's those that have never maybe explored outside of their county fair that are most likely to question your abilities.
Oh,
maybe as much as because you're young as anything.
This was funny too. Sunday when the monsoon and the norther had hit and all this, I was getting ready to pick Grand Champion Lamb, and I could see these looks of all these mostly dads' faces, and they were all like, "Oh Lord, what's gonna happen now?" And I said, "Y'all know that I normally take time in the Grand Drive to try to be motivational and inspirational, but in these conditions, I'm not going to take y'all to church on this Sunday. I'm just going to go out here and show you the two I like the best," because it wasn't the ideal situation to inspire anybody at that moment. But on Saturday in the Grand Drive, I talked about a lot that, I understand that this time that we're in, that we have to come together and join together as an industry. And we have to make this happen for our kids, because I don't know if we can rely on the same people and tactics that we have beforehand to make sure that these stock shows go on as they used to, because it's just a different situation now and different world. And it's going to be those of us in this community that have to band together and pull together to do it. And I said, what's at risk the most right now are the state fairs and the county fairs. When you compete and you're competitive, a lot of times you don't make a lot of friends. And especially at a county fair level, like you were saying, wars have been waged for less than what has happened trying to win a county fair steer show. Whether you love them or loathe them right now, you're going to have to come together and join with them and say, when we get to the show ring, it's every man and woman and child for themselves, but we're going to have to band together and join together to make sure that we can all get our kids to the show ring right now. And it is going to take every single one of us to do that. But yeah, county fairs are always interesting. And the one thing that I have never quite understood about the majority of county fairs, and maybe you can enlighten me on this, Dale, most of the Mater shows and most of the jackpot shows, they start in the morning. So normally they're finished by a decent time in the afternoon. The alcohol consumption is a lot less in the morning and in the early afternoon than it is in the evening. It seems like every county fair, by far and large, the majority of them start at night when everybody has been there all day, already cranky, already probably had a few beverages, etc. So it's just like hostile environment. Throw me in there.
I think it's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't know why they do it. Maybe they're not wanting to judge in the heat. I have no idea, but you're right. And there's a lot of those. And as your Grand Drive speech alluded to last weekend, I wanted to clear up one thing before we finish today. Indiana Extension came out with some recommendations here a week or so ago, and it was very strict about social distancing, masks, taking temperatures before you get to the county fair, basically stating that the extension shows had to adhere to these regulations in the state of Indiana when the governor's going the other direction and really opening things up on a very timely manner. So they came out even stronger than what was being put in place by the local officials and the state officials. And it really snowballed through a lot of county fairs. Ryan had mentioned how many he had canceled in July. Well, we're coming back now, and I'm finding out, and maybe we misinterpreted or the world misinterpreted it, but the extension office is saying now, or the head of extension, these were just recommendations, or not required, but rather recommendations. Well, the problem is a lot of these county shows took it differently and have already canceled. And I can't imagine they're going to backpedal and go back to it. So with that said, let's be very, very clear and communicate, ask questions, everything we can do, because we don't need to lose one single county show or a state fair or something because we misinterpreted something. And I have no idea how Purdue Extension or the state extension in Indiana wanted to come across. Maybe they're backpedaling now because it caused so much controversy. I don't know, but we have to do everything we possibly can to make sure everybody's on the same page. I feel for those kids that those counties are already canceled and calling Ryan, wanting him to do another virtual show, and I just don't know that he's going to do it.
I think my time in the virtual show ring has been nice. I've enjoyed it. I've got some more on the docket. Don't everybody freak out. It's already got me signed up for a virtual show. I've told you I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. As far as a jackpot situation, I'm probably going to bow out from here on out because jackpots are going again. And I enjoyed my time in the virtual show ring, but I think that I'm going to stick to the live version of shows because the coolest thing for me is actually interacting with those kids and the crowd and trying to give them a positive, enjoyable, sometimes humorous experience out in that ring, regardless of where they place at. If your county fair has canceled and can't happen, and I was on the docket to judge it, I will do my best to still work it in there. But now that things are opened up, I'm not going to be stuck in this house on Gay Hill as much as anymore. But as far as jackpot shows go, I'm probably gonna retire from the virtual show ring.
Well, we appreciate that you've gone through as many as you have, and Ryan, I absolutely enjoyed your stories today. I appreciate.
I've got more if they
you
want to hear
sharing.
more. I didn't even get through half my list. So if
We
you want
we
to,
have a story. We have a story. We can put a story in every month.
I mean, if y'all want to hear more, I've got more. But
Thank you, Ryan. Between now and next week, I hope we see more states opening up. I hope we see more normalization just in general, and I think it's going to happen even in those states like where I'm at in Illinois, with or without the support of our governor. And let's hope it happens safely. I feel like we're very much prepared as far as the hospital space and everything that we possibly can be. And we talked about the hidden health issues and some of those things that are going on behind the scenes, and it's coming out more and more, and it's time. I don't think we have a lot of choices. I don't think it's an easy choice. I don't think any of the shelter in place or quarantine restrictions, none of these decisions have been easy, but I'm pretty sure as we progress forward, it's time to start opening up, and there will be people exposed to COVID-19. There will be hospitalizations, and there will be deaths. We hope it's as minimal as possible, and we hope by opening it up, we're saving that many more lives by those things that aren't getting missed and all of the above. But we look forward to visiting with you again next week. Thank you, Ryan. Greatly appreciate all your stories.
see you next week.